Welcome back into the Sports Source, the segment of our program brought to you by Madisonville Marine. For nearly 50 years, Madisonville Marine has been supplying East Tennesseans with fishing boats, ski boats, pontoon boats, and more. They are built to last. Madisonville Marine, I mean, just like the boats they sell. There is no better place to buy a boat. Madisonville Marine. All right. When it comes to next football season, as we mentioned, there simply won't be as much off-season work as normal. Even if they figure out a way to get people back on campus a little early, you wouldn't think it would be for a full spring practice length. It may be a week, it may be a few days at the end of July leading into August. Isn't that an obvious advantage to the veterans on the Tennessee team, the guys coming back? I mean, for all of the people out there who were looking at five-star quarterback Harrison Bailey, oh, what if he could come in and win that job? Well, that was a slim chance to begin with. I would almost say it's no chance now. Mm-hmm. Veterans have to be the guys benefiting the most from this.
Yeah, I think a guy like Brandon Kennedy, who's had, physical injury problems in the past, this, and he knows what to do. So, this gets him a little safety period through where he's not going to get banged up again.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think you look at the veterans. It starts with Garantano because he's in a better position to hold that quarterback spot, or at least hold off Harrison Bailey for a longer period of time. And I think the wide receivers too, because you have such a great group of wide receivers in this class coming in that are going to be hard charging without a lot of spots there taken by the veterans. So I think those guys, the Palmers and some of those guys, I think it helps them to be able to hold off some of those promising young guys a little bit longer.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Although I will say this, I think that's the flip side of this. You look at some of the guys who benefit, and you would say Jarrett Garantano, because he's going to be able to hold off his guys. He's in the lead. Mm-hmm. Okay. But the downside for him is, he's coming back. It's the first time he's had the same system for 2 years.
It's true.
While Josh Palmer's been here, there is going to be a lot of new faces. There are going to be a lot of new faces in that receiving corps that I don't know how much he's going to be able to work with them. You're going to lose spring practice probably. So, do you get the step forward of, yay, you've been in the system, and now you haven't worked with these receivers? Because we know who he leaned on last year, and most of those guys are gone. I could see that hurting the pass game this year.
Well, with QBs and wide receivers, it would not surprise me if some of those guys organize, even if it's just one-on-one or very small groups.
Groups of under 10.
Yeah,
exactly.
Some throwing
6 feet
sessions.
apart.
Yes.
Mid-range passes.
Yeah, now they're catching the same football. But I would not surprise me if you see that. You're going to see it in college. I think you're going to see it definitely in the NFL, where guys are still going to get some work in the pass game. But it's not the same as when you're having to read defenses and react to 11-11.
Well, and having a coach there to say, no, run your route like this. You're curling it at the top. Stop.
Right.
I mean, that's a little different. By the way, that did give me an idea, though. When they do the wet ball drills, now they can just dunk them in Lysol or something instead of water. But are there any other positions? You look at guys. I think the guys that are disadvantaged are the true freshmen who are coming in because they don't know the system, haven't been through it. Transfers.
Right.
I mean, everybody's looking at Cade Mays and thinking he'll step right in and play any position, and maybe he can. But I think that he and the coaches would probably rather have a few practices under the belt in spring, and we don't know if he's going to be eligible yet, but I anticipate he will be.
Right.
Matter of fact, I think the NCAA, if we get to football season, I think the NCAA is going to probably be pretty lenient on eligibility issues this year. We'll see. But a guy like Cade Mays, for example, or receiver Velus Jones transferring in from Southern Cal, I think those guys are disadvantaged because they're not going to have that opportunity.
And I think guys like Wanya Morris and Darnell Wright certainly could have used a real good spring practice.
Yeah, offensive line was the one that I thought about, and Cooper Mays. I mean, he is dealing with an injury, so we wouldn't have seen him really in the spring anyway. But the offensive line is the toughest for you to be able to learn and contribute as a freshman. Obviously, we saw it with a couple of special guys last year, but typically that's where you have the biggest learning curve and you need the most reps. But for those guys, thankfully for Tennessee, they're not going to be relying on their freshman and newcomer offensive line other than Cade Mays, because I think if he's eligible, he plays and starts. But those guys, thankfully, there's some good quality veterans in front of them where there's not the rush to get them on the field without that extra work.
Yeah, and I think Wright, well, Morris was going to miss spring because he's hurt anyway, so he was going to miss. But Darnell Wright's a guy. Morris held down his job for the most part last year, whereas Wright, he was in and out of that lineup. So that's a guy that really could have benefited from an extra spring, especially with Morris out. You'd have guys moving around that line. You'd be able to test your depth a little bit more, figure out who can play which positions. You just don't have that opportunity.
And Wright didn't participate in spring practice last year where Morris did, so that showed out in the way the season played out.
Yeah, any other spots that
I
could
would
be hurt or helped by this? Well, let's talk about hurt.
Yeah, I don't see anybody really helped. I think we're kind of stretching by
Yeah,
saying.
you're looking at individuals there.
right.
But are there positions where you're going to be extremely young? I just look at receiver, offensive line where you're going to have a new face in Cade Mays. I don't know any other spots where maybe at linebacker where you don't have a ton of depth.
That's where I was going to mention, and especially because they cross-train those guys into multiple positions. Jeremy Pruitt talks about 4 for 4, where they train even a guy like Quavaris Crouch last year, trained him on the inside, played some outside, and kind of bounced around. When you're having them learn multiple positions and you're a young guy, I think that's difficult, especially without a spring practice. So that would be the next position I'd say would most impact you.
And here's the thing, not to be all negative here, the thing that people need to remember, it's not just Tennessee dealing with this.
Right.
You know, every school out there is going to be dealing with, all right, what position has youth coming in? I'll tell you somebody that's hurt. Georgia, new quarterback coming in. Any of these schools, the brand new quarterback coming in, the less time, tougher it's going to be. So your competition at Georgia, that they're going to feel it because it's their new quarterback coming in, transfer from Wake Forest.
New offense, too, in the UFC.
So, and then we've mentioned this before, mentioned it last week, the schools that are killed by this are those with a new head coach.
Right.
I mean, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, Pittman in Arkansas, and Drinkwitz at Missouri. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? Nobody's been in your strength program. No one knows your offense, defense. Everybody's new, and you don't get an off season, a full off season. You talk about starting behind the 8 ball. That is tough.
Yeah.
And you know fans aren't going to give it. If they go out and go, 3-9 this year, fans aren't going to give them any breaks.
No,
That'll go on the permanent record, and they'll remember in 3 years, well, his total record is just this. Yeah, but that first year he was screwed.
assuming there will be football on schedule in September, there's going to be some interesting games, I think, because of a lot of people are going to be playing catch up and not familiar, and
Weeks 1 and 2 could be pretty sloppy.
yeah.
Not to mention you could see some strange upsets. Of course, Tennessee fans know about September upsets from last year.
I think, John, if they're going to do anything for practices more so than bringing kids back for spring practice, I would like to see them maybe try to extend the fall practice, add some practice to that period of time. If it's logistically, if you can make it happen, maybe extend it, because you're going to have to have that build-up process anyway to get them back into shape.
This is a year. Is this a year with 2 open dates or just 1? I'm trying to remember if this is one of those weird calendar years where there's 2. Maybe there's just 1. But I do wonder if you might see, do teams adjust their schedule? And the problem is week 1 is going to be different for everybody. But you wonder if they could say, everybody nicks one of your crummy FCS games, and we're going to play an 11-game season, so we get an extra week here. But that'd be an awful lot of rotating. Schedules aren't going to mesh up. Never mind. Trying to think of different possibilities, but that one would be very tough for the NCAA and different schools to work out. We're going to talk in the next segment. Let me tell you, later in the show, coming up, we're going to do a good news segment. It's a new segment. Just a little positivity. If you're like me, you need some positive stuff. So we'll do that. But next, we're going to take a real turn to the negative. What if this lasts longer? And what impact could that have on leagues, schools, teams? Could we see schools drop sports? Could we see some franchises disappear? If we went 12 months without sports, worst case scenario. That's next. Then positive news. Come on back on the Sports Source.